Hello everyone and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspects. Arsenal versus Real Madrid. Why I think Real Madrid should be scared of Arsenal. Buckle up, football fanatics, because we are destined for a monumental clash in the UEFA Champions League at the quarter-final stage for the first time when Arsenal face off with the kings of Europe in Real Madrid. 15 times they've been crowned champions of Europe, while Arsenal, on the other side, have only been reduced to be remembered as the losing finalists of 2006 in Paris, as they lost to Barcelona by 2-1. We are talking about two footballing giants inked in the history of the UEFA Champions League. One, desperate to forget their near-missed title charges domestically, but also eager to rewrite their history on the European scene. The other, desperate to defend their crown. That is what has gotten the football world buzzing. Whether you support Arsenal, Real Madrid, or just a football fanatic, this is the game you have to look out for. That's why I urge you to cancel, perhaps change, or amend whatever plans you may have planned for Tuesday, the 8th of April, because Gunners will entertain the Whites, Real Madrid, at the Emirates Stadium. Think about the tactical masterclass that Mikel Arteta must pull off if he is to overcome a seasoned and four-time winner, the UEFA Champions League, as manager in Carlo Ancelotti. He guided Real Madrid in 2014 to the La Decima, and he's done it twice since then. While Arsenal on the other side are still searching for their first piece of silverware as far as the European scene is concerned. Think about the electrifying speed of Bukayo Saka if it is to return on time to face off with Real Madrid versus the intricate skills of Vinicius Jr. on the other side. The midfield mastery of Martin Odegaard versus the burgeoning elegancy of Jude Bellingham on the Real Madrid side. Luka Modric happy to face off with Thomas Partey in a midfield collision of classics. Well, there's a lot to look forward to between these two sides. One has all the pedigree, but one equally has history. Although it is not fancy as the other, it's one that we cannot underestimate. Ladies and gentlemen, let's discuss Arsenal versus Real Madrid. While all the odds may point to Real Madrid's favor and everything is on their side, including a better squad, including luck, including the pedigree and the experience, there are reasons as to why I think Real Madrid should be scared of facing Arsenal at this stage in the UEFA Champions League competition. It's not the first time that the two sides are meeting in the UEFA Champions League, but it will be the first time that they are meeting at the quarterfinals of this competition. The first time they did meet was back in 2006, but they met at the round of 16 with Arsenal knocking out Real Madrid 1-0 on aggregate. For those of you that do not remember that historical fixture, at the time Real Madrid still had players like Guti, Zinedine Zidane, they had Julio Baptista, they had Raul Gonzalez, they had Ronaldo Nazario, Dalima, they had Roberto Carlos, Iker Casillas, they had Sergio Ramos at centre back, and all those kinds of players. Arsenal on the other side had Jens Lehmann, Philippe Sandros, Cole Toure, Alexander Lev, Thierry Henry, Freddie Ljungberg, Dennis Bergkamp, Cesc Sola Fabregas, Robert Reyes, among others, the likes of Emmanuel Eboué, Matthew Flamini, among others. Theo Walcott was on the bench on that night as Thierry Henry scored the only goal that knocked out Real Madrid in Arsenal's progression to the finals of 2006. On their way, they knocked out teams like Juventus, they knocked out teams like Villarreal, that was at the semi-finals, before losing to Barcelona by 2-1 in the finals, in which they suffered a red card to Jens Lehmann. Well, that's all history. Let's talk about present. While that is history, present day, Real Madrid are the reigning champions, having beaten up against Borussia Dortmund by 2-0 in last year's final to lift their 15th UEFA Champions League title. Between 2016 and 2018. They won the competition 3 times consecutively. So, clearly, while it seems odd to say that Real Madrid should be scared of Arsenal, there are reasons for it, and we are diving right into those reasons. Here is why, in my personal opinion, as to why I think Real Madrid should have some fear or should feel threatened facing off this Arsenal side. One, we'll start with Arsenal's home record in the competition. They played 5 games so far this season, won 4 and drawn 1. That draw coming at the knockout stages, the round of 16, drawing 2-2 against PSV. But they had won all the other 4 games at home. And overall, in the competition, they've played 10 times. Out of the 10 times, they've won 7, they've drawn 2, and lost only 1, losing to Inter Milan by 1-0 in Italy. The other draw coming up against Atlanta during the group stage format or the league stage format. So clearly, this Arsenal side have been performing really well. 2, Arsenal's defensive strength in the competition is a statistic that we cannot ignore. The Gunners have so far only conceded 6 goals in 10 games played of the UEFA Champions League. They have 5 clean sheets. Only Liverpool and Inter Milan have managed more. Only Inter Milan have conceded fewer goals than this Arsenal side, because the other team that only managed to concede just 6 was Liverpool, who are by this stage out of the UEFA Champions League after being knocked out. Out of the 6 goals conceded, 3 of those came at the round of 16 at the hands of PSV when they won away in Netherlands by 7-1, and the 2 goals they conceded in the reverse fixture in that 2-all draw. So meaning, out of the 8 games they played at the league stage or the group stage of the Champions League, they only conceded 3 goals. They conceded 1 in their 1-0 loss against Inter Milan. They conceded 1 against Girona in their 2-1 win against Girona in Spain, and then they conceded 1 in their 5-1 victory against Sporting Lisbon. So clearly, when you look at their defensive numbers, they're quite solid, they're quite brilliant. While the same cannot be said for Real Madrid on the other side, because while Real Madrid have always been impressive in the UEFA Champions League this season, their defense has been as leaky as it comes. Here's why. They've conceded 17 goals so far in the competition and scoring 28. Their goalkeepers in Thibaut Courtois, who has played 10 games, and then Lunini, who played I think the other 2, have conceded a combined total of 17 goals. In between them, they have 51 saves. So clearly, that means their midfield is penetratable and their defense is penetratable. That's why the keepers have as many saves as recorded. So there's something to think about this Real Madrid defensive weaknesses. But there's more to think about when it comes to Arsenal's defensive strength. In the aftermath of Arsenal's 1-0 victory over Chelsea over the weekend, Mikel Arteta did acknowledge that they are one of the best defensively organized teams there is. Because he was saying that when you look at Chelsea, statistically, when you look at their numbers, they are the best attacking team in the Premier League in terms of attacking strength. Forget goals scored, how many assists, what, forget those numbers. In terms of attacking strength, when you look at the kinds of players they've had at their disposal, the amount of times they run at you, you ought to be defensively solid to keep them at bay. He was speaking in that respect. And because they managed to fend off Chelsea, he says their defensive shape, their organization in defense is something to reckon with. It's something to be admired. It is one of the best there is. And you really can't. Over the last 2 seasons, we've been discussing the defensive partnership of William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, one of the best there has ever been in the Premier League. Unfortunately for them, they are yet to lift a piece of silverware together in terms of major titles for them to go forward and ink their names in history, but take nothing away from them. They've been solid in that backline. Of course, we've seen changes to their right back, left back, depending on who is available. But Ben White, Julian Timber, Carafiori, Miles Lewis Kelly, whichever you call upon, that Arsenal backline cohort, whether it is Jakub Kivior, who may be called upon in circumstances that Arsenal do not wish to find themselves in at the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, should they find any of their better players absent, they have always delivered. So clearly, it's been quite impressive. Arsenal's defensive strength, when you look at them, because Inter Milan, I think Inter Milan has conceded what? Only 2 goals so far in the competition. Liverpool conceded 6 and Arsenal have conceded 6. And like we've said, 3 of those goals came at the round of 16. So Arsenal's defensive strength is something that should scare Real Madrid. Is something that should concern Real Madrid. Is something that will keep Real Madrid thinking and thinking, recalibrating their plans, perhaps adjusting their tactics. We've talked about clean sheets. Arsenal have kept as many as 5 clean sheets throughout the course of the competition. That's a 50% rating because they played 10 games, 5 clean sheets. Only Inter Milan and Liverpool have more because Inter Milan have kept 8 clean sheets out of the 10 games they've played. Then Liverpool managed 6 clean sheets at the time of their exit from the competition. And the other teams that have kept as many clean sheets as Arsenal have been Aston Villa, Borussia Dortmund, and Bayer Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen, as we speak, are already out of the competition. They're out, knocked out, I think, on a 5-0 aggregate at the hands of their rivals in Bayern Munich. So clearly, Arsenal's defensive strength is something we can talk about all night. Then, their set-piece strength. While that strength had seemed to have died down between December and mid-March, we saw that brilliance again over the weekend as Arsenal beat up against Chelsea by 1-0. Mikel Merino heading that ball home off a Martin Odegaard corner kick. In the UEFA Champions League, Arsenal have scored as many as 25 goals, but 6 of those have been scored through headers. Set-piece plays. Remember that free kick of Bukayo Saka versus PSG at the Emirates Stadium? You'll remember that. So, when it comes to set pieces, they're quite good. That's an avenue in which they get goals. And sometimes, like we keep saying, the UEFA Champions League, it's not really about who played the best on a day sometimes. It's more about who took their moments when those moments arose. We all remember Liverpool being outplayed off the park at Parc de France against PSG, and yet they went on to win that game by 1-0. Curtis Jones scoring that goal around the 86th minute, and PSG had nothing to show for it, yet they had dominated every aspect of play. Of course, PSG were eventually able to overcome Liverpool in the reverse fixture that ended 1-0, and then they went into penalties that they won 4-2. You get, but that game at Parc de France clearly tells you that it doesn't matter much how well you play. It matters more how you take your moments. And in the UEFA Champions League, Real Madrid is one of those teams that has shown us time and again that when you take your moments, you can go further in the competition. So, when it comes to set-piece strength, Arsenal have that advantage. And if they can choose their moments perfectly, why not? Clearly, they will be able to knock out Real Madrid. Because, let's not forget, Real Madrid have defects in defense. They've had so many injuries. Injuries to Dani Carvajal, injuries to David Alaba, so many injuries they've had to struggle with in that backline. And as we speak of today, there's been rumor, it's a public secret that Real Madrid are keeping their eyes on William Saliba because they look at him as the Jude Bellingham of defense. They look at him as their next Sergio Ramos, that reliable defender. So, Real Madrid will have set pieces to think about when they are looking at Arsenal's strength, when they are looking at points of concern that should worry them, that should scare them when they are going to face Arsenal, because Arsenal while they are missing their forward players, their Kai Havertz, their Gabriel Jesus, when it comes to set pieces, they have the very tall players. You have Declan Rice, who floats them in, very tall player. Gabriel Magalhaes scored so many headed goals. William Saliba scored one against Manchester United. I mean, you have Mikel Moreno, you have Thomas Partey. These are all tall players that can hit that ball home. You have Ricardo Carafiori, another tall player. Julian Timber is not short by them. Ben White is not short. So clearly, that height advantage, that height strength, possibly gives them another edge when they go for set piece plays, and that should worry. That should scare Real Madrid because when Nicolas Jova does his thing, it may have not clicked in the last 3 months. It may have, gone cold, but you never know when they can weaken it and really punish you on the day. Then, the possible return of Bukayo Saka. Now, present day, since December 21st, Arsenal have been without Bukayo Saka. That's almost coming to 3 months. Missing their star boy, their star player. By the time he got injured, he was the best assist provider. 10 assists in the Premier League. The UEFA Champions League was a combined top scorer with Kai Havertz, who we all know that has since been ruled out for the rest of the season, having suffered that hamstring that saw him undergo surgery. Both were tied to 4 goals apiece by the time they got injured. And they've missed a good chunk of games since then. But Bukayo Saka, as Mikel Arteta does, it is possible that he will have returned by the time they face Real Madrid on Tuesday, 8th April. Speculation has it that he will be fit to play Fulham with Arsenal face off with Fulham after the international break. Remember, this weekend there will be the international break. After the international break, the following weekend will be for the FA Cup. And then in the following week, midweek, on Tuesday and Wednesday, there will be Premier League fixtures and Arsenal will be facing off with Fulham. It is speculated that he will be available, maybe not to start, but on the bench for that fixture against Fulham. And after that, they'll have, of course, another weekend Premier League game that I can't recall. But after that, then they will face off with Real Madrid on a Tuesday in the UEFA Champions League. We talked about Real Madrid conceding. They concede so many goals. They've conceded as many as 17 goals. Of course, it goes without saying that they've played 2 more games as compared to Arsenal, because Real Madrid have played 12 games in the competition. Reason being, they did not finish in the top 8, so they had to have a playoff in which they faced off with Man City, and they went on to win that one. But, I mean, that's an average of 1.42 per game in terms of goals conceded. Now, when you have a team, by their striking problems, a team as good as Arsenal, who have so far scored 25 goals in the competition, clearly, and you consider that many, or that often, or that much, it should really scare you. It should worry you. We saw against PSV, they did not have the strikers. We all know their striking strength is absent. And yet they managed to score 7 goals. Martin Odegaard, scoring a brace in that particular game. Mikel Merino on target in that one. Ricardo Carafiori on target in that one. Declan Rice, was it? Ethan Nwaneri on target. So, while they are missing their lead goal scorers in Kai Havertz, of course, Kai Havertz had scored 9 goals by the time of his injury in the Premier League. He had scored 4 goals in the UEFA Champions League. So, then Gabriel Jesus had scored 4 goals in the Carabao Cup. In the Premier League, he had started picking his form. He got injured. They will miss those, no doubt, without a doubt. But they've shown us that they are capable of coming up with goals. Yes, in some games they've struggled because of lack of a striker, because of the lack of that. We saw that against West Ham. We saw it against Nottingham Forest. They lost to West Ham by 0-0. It was a goalless draw with Nottingham Forest. We saw it against Manchester United in that 1-1 draw. But then also, they showed us against Manchester City that they can score 5. They showed us against PSV that they can score 7. So clearly, their goals can come from multiple, if not different sources, even where you least expect them. In, for example, the manner in which Ricardo Carafiori scored that seventh goal against PSV, took that ball with finesse, with the eyes of, with with the cleanness of a striker, with the mind of a striker, without looking at the goal directly, just simply knew where to slot that ball. So clearly, Real Madrid with their leaky defense will have something to ponder about, will have something that scares them about this Arsenal side. Because Bukayo Saka does return on in time. He can score. On a day, it could be Gabriel Martinelli. It could be Leandro Trossard that rises to the occasion. It could be Mikel Moreno. It could be Ethan Nwaneri. It could be Martin Odegaard. It could be Declan Rice that chooses to take the ball by its straps and score that goal that makes the difference. It could be Gabriel Magalhaes that rises to a set piece and scores. It could be William Saliba. So that strength in Arsenal, knowing that goals can come from multiple places, goals can come from multiple players, I think would be something that also scares or even worries Carlo Ancelotti. As they make their game plans, as they draw their tactics, they will know that them cutting out Mikel Merino as the false nine or the striker, whether it is the Leandro Trossard, that won't be enough because they're not your typical striker. They are not your broad Erling Haaland to say, oh, I can man mark this one out of the game. They're not that kind of player. So their rotations, we've seen it many times. You'll find Declan Rice in the final third ahead of the depth striker in Mikel Moreno. You'll find it's a Martin Odegaard. We saw Zinchenko stepping up against PSV in the return leg. So clearly, the ability of Arsenal to get goals from multiple sources is something that should scare Real Madrid ahead of their clash with Arsenal. Like I said, the two sides are faced off before at the round of 16 in the 2005-2006 UEFA Champions League season, and Arsenal managed to overcome Real Madrid. It was a goalless draw at home at Arsenal, and then they won it at the Bernabeu by a goal to nil. Thierry Henry scoring that goal. Of course, Jens Lehmann had to make so many saves in that particular game. For those of you that remember, I do not think he conceded a goal until the finals, because even in the finals, it wasn't him that conceded the goal. It was Manuel Almunia who was, brought on. Of course, Robert Pires being sacrificed in that game to pave way for Manuel Almunia, following that red card to Jens Lehmann. So, Arsenal's defensive strength. We could see a repeat of the events that we saw nearly 2 decades ago when Arsenal went on to reach the finals. Again, their defensive strength. They knocked out Juventus 2-0 on aggregate. They knocked out Villarreal in the semi-finals 1-0 on aggregate. You all remember Riquelme missing a penalty in that particular tie. So, clearly, could this be the time that Arsenal repeat those heroics? The only difference this time around is it's a different crop of players, different managers, different stage of the competition. The other time it was at the round of 16, this time it's at the quarterfinals. Guys, do let me know what you think. Is there a reason for you that you think Real Madrid should be scared of Arsenal? Maybe it could be one of those reasons that I've left out. Of course, the two sides have met outside serious competitions. For example, in 2019, they met in Washington, D.C. in a preseason friendly that ended 2-2, and then I think Real Madrid won it 5-3 on penalties in a preseason friendly. But those kinds of games have been there between the two sides. But as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned, they've only met twice. Arsenal scored 1 goal, Real Madrid didn't score. Now we're talking about a Real Madrid that had Raul Gonzalez. We're talking about a Real Madrid that had Ronaldo Nazario da Lima. We're talking about a Real Madrid that had David Beckham, a Real Madrid that had Zinedine Zidane, a Real Madrid that had Guti, a Real Madrid that had Iker Casillas in goal, a Real Madrid that had Roberto Carlos, a Real Madrid that had Julio Baptista, a Real Madrid that had Robinho Robson da Souza, very young player at the time, That's the Real Madrid. They were that good. They still had the big name players. You get, and somehow Arsenal managed to overcome them. Of course, Arsenal equally had good players. Kylian was at the top of his game. Alexander Hleb, very good dribbler, very skillful. Gilberto Silva in that midfield. Cesc Fabregas was still a very young player, but very skillful. You get, that was the cohort of players. You had an Emmanuel Eboué at right back. You had a Matthew Flaming, who was a midfielder but played as a makeshift, left back. In that game, you had the Felipe Senros, not the best of defenders, but they managed to deliver the goals. Alongside Habib Cole Toure, that was the team that played. Present day, we are talking about a different facet, a different facet of teams. And if you ask, and by the way, speaking of being a different group of players, let me give you my best starting level, a combined starting level for these two teams. If you were to ask me, of course, the manager would have to be Carlo Ancelotti. He's won the title 4 times: 2014, 2007 with AC Milan, 2014 with Real Madrid, 2022 with Real Madrid, and 2024 with Real Madrid. Then, in goal, I'll choose Thibaut Courtois over David Raya. Thibaut Courtois, he has all the experience, he's won it. I do not know how many finals he's played in the UEFA Champions League, but he was on the losing end in 2014 as Atletico Madrid were being beaten by Real Madrid 4-1 after extra time. Because that game was 1-0, a goal scored by Diego Godin, I think. Then in stoppage time or added time, 93rd minute, Sergio Ramos scores the equalizer. Then in extra time, Gareth Bale scores a header off a deflected Angel Di Maria attempt. And then you had Marcelo score to make it 3-1, and then a penalty by Cristiano Ronaldo that made it 4-1. So at right back, Dani Carvajal. Recently, it's been Fede Valverde that has been played at right back versus Julian Timber versus Ben White. I'd go with Julian Timber. Centre back pairing, I'd go with William Saliba and Antonio Rudiger. I'm leaving the likes of David Alaba out. Gabriel Magalhaes is a very good defender, but I'm opting for Antonio Rudiger in that combined midfield. Left back, that's where I have issues. You have Zinchenko, Carafiori, you have Miles Lewis Kelly, you have Falan Mendy. I'm going for Falan Mendy. Lewis Kelly, inexperienced, almost got himself a red card in that PSV game, and then you look at Zinchenko, his defensive inefficiencies are similar to Ricardo Carafiori. Carafiori is a very good defender, no doubt, but he's a more better ball carrier progressively than he is a defender. So that's why I'm going for Falan Mendy. In midfield, I'm going with Thomas Partey to be my holding midfielder. Yes, I'm leaving out the likes of Aurelio Tchouameni, Eduardo Camavinga, and the likes. Jorginho on this other side, I'm going for Thomas Partey to play alongside Luka Modric and Jude Bellingham. Now, this was a bit of a tough one. I had to leave out Martin Odegaard. I had to leave out Declan Rice. But the experience of Luka Modric is something that can be ignored. He's been there. He's won it. His experience speaks volumes. Jude Bellingham. Last season, he showed it all to us. He is that player. He is a better player than we often speak about him. And then, the forward lines. I'm going with Kylian Mbappe, Bukayo Saka, and Vinicius Jr. Leaving out the likes of Gabriel Martinelli, Rodrigo Goes, of course, Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus were never in contention because they're out, injured, or absent. Do let me know if you disagree with me on that combined 11. But speaking of Arsenal, speaking of Real Madrid being scared of Arsenal, again, my best Arsenal starting 11. let's take the assumption that Bukayo Saka has returned at that time. But here's my and perhaps Ben White has played a reasonable number of games and is fully 100% fit. Here's would be my preferred starting lineup for Arsenal, for the Arsenal side, because today we are speaking about why Real Madrid should be scared of this Arsenal side. I'll go with David Ryan goal, Julian Timber at left back, Ben White at right back, William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes. Yes, I know you're going to ask why is Timber going to the left and all that kind of thing. Because I think he offers better defensive strength than all the other left backs that Arsenal do have. That's Miles Lewis Kelly, Ricardo Carafiori, Zichenko, Kian Tierney. I think he offers better defensive abilities than all those four players. And yet Arsenal is going to be facing arguably the best forward in Europe, because out of Real Madrid's 28 core squad, 19 of those have been scored by Real Madrid's front three of Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Junior and Rodrigo. So clearly, that's why I'm choosing Julian Timber. Then in midfield, I'll go Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard, and Declan Rice. The forward lines, I'll go if Bukayo Saka is fully fit and has returned. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me for Bukayo Saka to start. Bukayo Saka is going to start. I'll go with Leandro Trossard to start as my false nine and Gabriel Martinelli. Why? My expectation is that Leandro Trossard and Martinelli can keep on interswitching, or even the entire front three can keep on interswitching. But I want their speedy strength to run at that Madrid leaky defense. That's the idea. That's why I'm dropping Nwaneri. That's why I'm not thinking about Sterling. That's why I'm not thinking about Mikel Merino. If you agree with me, give me a comment. What do you think? If you disagree, still let me know down in the comment section. And if you're new to the channel, do not forget to kindly subscribe, turn on your notifications so that we can continue. Otherwise, keep it locked on the Football Tribe UG channel, and I'll keep you abreast. Stay blessed for now. Bye-bye.